wanted to own a restaurant. My father owned restaurants, his father owned restaurants, his father owned restaurants, and his father owned restaurants. I was promoted to general manager of a restaurant one night, being a waiter, and we were going through town in Laguna Beach, and I was drinking Black and Tans, and we had gotten stoned, and I walked up to my first location, and I looked inside, and I thought, wow, I want to open up a gallery there. And 2 days later, I signed a lease with a Greek man named Soto Kafitsopoulos, and he asked me, what makes you think you can own an art gallery? And I said, well, I want to have this gallery in this space. And he said, well, how can you pay for it because you have no money? And I told him that I was working in a restaurant and that I was making $21.12 every 2 weeks, which was like the Rush album that I grew up with, and that I would sign it over to him and pay him the rent. And I did. Every paycheck I signed it over to pay to the order of Soto Kafitsopoulos. That's how the gallery got started. And after 2 years, I moved it to North Laguna. My goal was to have the best art gallery in Laguna Beach. And I went through the canyon and went through studios until I found the best artists in Laguna Beach, and I showed them in my first show. The toughest show I've had in 20 years was LLYN Folks. LLYN was incredible. I went into a studio, I saw these paintings that were on the floor that he'd been working on and off while he was working on that huge masterpiece that he did. And somehow or another, I just engaged him in conversation to quite possibly have a show with these paintings that were on the floor that could possibly be completed at a certain date. And, you know, he was earnest in wanting to complete those paintings on the date that they were supposed to be completed, but it didn't happen. And I just learned a lot about the passion of LLYN Folks. It had nothing to do with me, my expectations, curators, critics, collectors. It didn't fucking matter. What mattered was he was going to complete those paintings when he was damn good and ready. And when he did finally complete the paintings, he told me to hire an electrical engineer that would come out and move the tracks either far enough away or far enough down to replicate the exact ratio of lighting that he had in his studio so that the shadows from the three-dimensional paintings that he was doing were perfect. And I was also told that I would have to block out the window and block out skylights, and that I would get to work sometime in the next couple of weeks while I was sitting in an empty gallery. But we had a great show. It was an incredible show. There were some significant shows. There were some significant shows that stand out. There was a show when I opened my second space for an artist named Tom WUDL, who I'd met through Astrid Preston. And she had been my second solo show in my old location. And Tom showed up, and I struck up a conversation with him, and I was fascinated by him. And he invited me to come out to his studio, and I went out to his studio and just fell in love with his work. And a couple of months later, I was moving the gallery to a smaller location up in North Laguna by the Laguna Art Museum. And I asked Tom if he would be my inaugural show. And he came to see the space, which was tiny. And he was just gracious enough to say, you know, okay, we can talk about this. And he kind of knew that I wasn't going to say, you know, I wasn't going to stop asking. And he finally directed me to Peter Gould and Kimberly Davis. And that prompted a relationship that lasted 20 years. I have a great deal of respect for Kimberly and Peter. And they not only gave me the Tom WUDL show that inaugurated the second space, but also went on to introduce and allow me to show Peter Shelton, Tony Berlant, Joe Good, Ed Moses. It goes on and on and on. And I have, again, a great deal of respect for the way they operate a gallery, and I always aspire to be like those people that ran this gallery that I thought was so incredible. I haven't had the most disastrous show I've had in 20 years, but I'll tell you about the one I averted. There was this guy that came in named, God, I think his name was Jerry Mangrum, and he was a San Francisco installation artist, and he wanted to do an installation in the gallery. And he tried to talk me into attaching oranges on the walls and putting molasses down on the floor, and somehow this was going to signify oil and big money in Orange County and all of this stuff. And it all sounded fine, but there was no way I was going to destroy my space doing it. And I knew it would. Growing up in the restaurant business, I just knew what was going to happen when you started sticking citrus to walls and molasses on floors. So he got upset with me, but he nonetheless put together this installation of flowers that he laid down on the ground that were absolutely incredible, that we had to keep Lagunans from walking through. But he did convince another gallery owner, who I won't mention, to do the show, and it destroyed his gallery. And the poor guy had wooden floors, not concrete. So that was I haven't had disaster shows, but I averted one. That was the one. I fucking hate LED lighting, and I see it all over galleries, and I see fluorescent all over galleries, and I think, why would you bathe artwork in white gaseous light? I mean, if your building inspector forced you into it, I'm buying it. If you're calling that stuff green, buy it for yourself, but why would you want to bathe anything? And now it's in restaurants. Like, you'd want to eat food that was under fluorescent or LED lighting. Halogen lighting is the best. You either go with low voltage halogen or you go with halogen like the ones here. Incandescent is too yellow, it casts a yellow light, and this stuff is just white gas. Yes, I've had a ton of resistance. It cost me 5 years working in a restaurant, but eventually the resistance was over. One thing I did was never underestimate Orange County. Even though it is what it is a great place, and there are a lot of people that have come from different places, and it's coming into its own. And in '93 when I opened, everyone said I was crazy, and I was. In '98 when the gallery started breaking even and I could leave my restaurant job, I don't know whether I proved anyone wrong or not, but I proved myself right, which was important, and the gallery took off from there. You know, I can only imagine that this recession and every crazy thing that's been going on in the world might have led some of us to a place where it became just quieter, and it became more about, wow, that's 50 coats of blue paint. I know that's shallow, but I don't give a fuck. It's just, sometimes it just doesn't matter. That blue painting over there, I brought here because I wanted to cheer myself up, and it does it. And it's not a swan, it's not children playing in a playground. It's just a blue painting, but it does it. And I stuck by it because in 1993, I showed a hard edge painting. I lost money for years and years and years showing minimal abstraction and reductive painting. When this recession came around and you couldn't sell anything, I figured, well then fuck it, I'm just going to show minimal abstraction, and I'm going to force feed it to anyone that will eat it, and luckily I did. I don't work with any dead artists. There are many artists that I work with that will finally realize their full potential when they are dead. Would love to handle their estates, but somehow or another I continue to work with them. My hat's off to people that work with emerging artists though. That's the one thing I can't get. They are the toughest to deal with. An artist in their 20s is beyond me, and I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm tough and I can't deal with them. I briefly represented an artist in Mary Chorus back around 2000, and I just thought she was the most incredible artist in the world. And somehow or another I managed to buy a few of her paintings, and my wife at the time threatened me with divorce if I bought another one. Didn't talk to me, matter of fact, after the purchase of one of them. And somehow or another we had a show for Mary, and we sold many paintings, and I managed to convince people that her art was incredible. And just as we finished the show, she was picked up or re-picked up by a great gallery, Ace Gallery, and I wasn't able to show her again. And I remember thinking, wow, this is incredible. It was the first time that I really felt like, oh, I'd lost a huge artist, but I lost it to a gallery that had been there for her for years and is still there for her, so it doesn't feel that bad. Yes, you usually can tell because they're not calling you or talking to you, and that usually means that they're lying through a mission. They have shows that are coming up that they're planning, they don't want you to know about because somehow or another it interferes with what you're thinking about doing with them. And over the years you kind of get to know these things, and again, it's not lying, it's just lying through omission. Sometimes I've noticed with people that have too much of an education, they're so bogged down in the past and trying to reference artwork that they don't see the future, or they think they see the future. And they go to extremes to see the future, but they should just really just look at what their eye is seeing. And I guess, you know, that's what I've always done, is just looked at what my eye said, that's art, and I don't second guess myself.
So who are some of your favorite artists that you've worked with?
I've enjoyed so many artists at so many different times, just working with them, and working with them when they were just like going through bodies of work that are incredible. And I had Peter Alexander come and stay at our house for like 2 or 3 weeks, and he painted these series of paintings up on this hill that I lived in, Laguna Beach. And it was a spectacular show, and we had so many evenings where I would come home from the gallery and he would leave the carport that he was painting from, and we would have great dinners and talk about the work, and then the show happened, and it was incredible. It just totally captured a moment in time for especially myself, because I always remember that time in Cianothus, and that was the show. October of '08, when I opened the most incredible space that I'd ever seen, and still haven't seen anything better. And it crashed. And I thought I was above the economy. And it dawned on me that, oh my God, even after all those years, it wasn't 93 when I opened, it wasn't 2001 when planes crashed into buildings and caused a recession. Now, here we are, and it's 2008, and everything's been going great, and that rhymed, and all of a sudden it just goes crashing down and the perfect storm hits. I've got this big beautiful space, everything is great, and it collapses, and all the debt and everything with it goes down. And I thought, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening again. I thought I was above it, and welcome to the art world. What crashed was sales. All of a sudden we went from doing business to no business, and it wasn't like I was at a dinner party one night and this guy talks about his business is 7% down, and I thought, oh, wow, 7%. My business was down like 50 or 60% at that point. And I thought, that's the way the art world goes down. It doesn't go down a few percentage points. When people are scared, they don't buy art. And the best thing is that you're debt-free, you own your building, and everything's great. You don't want to be me that just built this building, spent every penny you had, and then borrowed a bunch, and now all of a sudden things are crashing and you have to pay for all of it. And I did, somehow or another. And the one-bedroom apartment you're looking at is how I did it. There have been many high points in my career, but I would have to say that the most recent high point was sitting in Palm Springs, of all places, and looking at my booth and realizing that I now had a gallery that was exhibiting international artists and national artists, and taking nothing away from the California exclusive that I had, but I looked back on it and it all looked like California art. And at some point I had to think, had California influenced the entire world? Be honest to yourself, be honest to your artists, be honest to the people that buy from you, and you might make it through. If you're dishonest, like most art dealers, then you really don't stand a chance. But if you pay your artists, if you respect their work and you don't damage it, if you hang it properly and you design an exhibition that is in some way respectful of the year that they spent working on the show, and somehow or another you throw them a party that celebrates it, and you sell the work and you pay them for their work. That's all I can say. Once all of those come together, that's the most incredible part of the art world. And I've experienced it for 20 fucking years. And I dare you, here's a Gary Hart, to find an artist that can say he wasn't paid by Peter Blake. You know, the most annoying thing a gallerist has to deal with is an artist just kind of launching onto you at a time when you are busy, you're at an art fair, you're in your gallery with a client, and it's the age-old thing. You've come all the way to meet this dealer and you want to be in that gallery. And fortunately, now you have all these digital means where you can send an image to a dealer, and that dealer has a quick second to look at it and see whether it's worthwhile or not for them. You don't have to barge in on them anymore. It's not like the old days. You know, I'm sure I annoy my artists sometimes, and I'm sure they annoy me sometimes, but if you're in the gallery and you're part of the family, then we get past all of the annoying things about ourselves, because inevitably I'm the cafeteria food and they're the cafeteria. I can't even call it a cardinal sin because it's such a part of the art world. We exploit artists, we don't pay artists, we do all these things to artists. We chase them underground, and then when they start selling out of their studios, we blame them for ripping us off. You know, artists like us are just doing what we do, and if everyone's respectful of each other, then everything's cool. And the relationships that I've grown with for all these years have been the ones that respected that and just said, you know what, you're my dealer and you're my artist, and we take care of each other. The relationships with, you know, these galleries that are ripping people off, or for that matter, are so engaged in intellectual bullshit that they can't sell a work, you know, just get to the point where you actually do something for someone and it'll come back to you. I see myself as a Laguna Beach gallery because that's where my brick and mortar gallery is, that's where my home is, and that's where I love to live. I view myself as an Orange County gallery because in the bigger picture, when you factor in the museums and all the other galleries, that's the county that we do business in. An hour into my first art fair, which was last year, 19 years too late, I realized that the ceiling was gone. There was no Orange County gallery, there was no Laguna Beach gallery. I was now an international dealer. I just happened to have a brick and mortar gallery in Laguna Beach, but all of that had changed, and none of that could have happened without the internet, without Google, without Facebook, without the internationalization of artwork and art fairs, and Swenson.